Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track. It's America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian. That's Rob. Rob, we have a race today to review, but there's a couple things I know we want to get to first.
Yeah, absolutely. It would seem wrong not to start with news and social in probably some of the biggest breaking news of the week, at least from my side of the pond, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Obviously, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth passed away this week. I kind of found me leaving... it left me feeling really weird because I, as I kind of put out on social, not the biggest royal fan in the world, but like kind of quite proud that we've got a royal family. And I always thought she always seemed like she had a little bit of a mischievous side when she had the little giggle on her face. So when the news hit, I was like, yeah, that's really super sad. So we decided we wanted to kind of merge together some kind of F1 and the Queen's reign to kind of put the Queen's reign into some kind of perspective as just how long she sat on the throne in F1 terms. And it was kind of late Thursday. I reached out to my friend Andy of Sandwich Rant remix song fame and said, very, very skinny remit to him, is there any way you could mash up something to do with Formula One and something to do with the Queen? So here's a little teaser for what he came up with. So it goes on for 4 minutes. It is absolutely amazing. It is a mashup of the original F1 music, The Chain, by Fleetwood Mac, I believe, and the national anthem. So as a mark of respect, we're going to play that out in its entirety at the end of this episode. But right now we're going to go into a Queen Elizabeth Sap Stat edition.
And that was the Sap Stat intro. So
that was the Sap Stat intro.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. Like I say, he literally pulled that together in about 2 hours. And when he emailed it to me, it must have been like about 2 a.m. his time. So, he obviously had an idea in his head and he had to commit it before he could go to sleep.
He's super talented.
He really is. So, as we mentioned when we spoke to Jacques Villeneuve, and if no one heard that episode, please go listen to it. We
can be found on our website under special editions.
So we told him he was one of 34 people to have won the World Drivers' Championship since F1 started in 1950. As the Queen took over in 1952, her reign oversaw 33 of those 34 pick up their drivers' titles. So only Farina in 50 was a title not won under her reign. The last Grand Prix started before her reign was Fangio in Spain in October 51, and the first of her reign was the Swiss GP in 1952, won by Piero Taruffi in a Ferrari. Wasn't repeated today, but we'll come on to that later. A little bit of an American theme here if we decide to go for last driver to win a race before she was crowned rather than before she took over the throne. She was crowned in 53, and Bill Vukovic of the USA won the Indy GP in 53, the last race before she took the crown like about 3 days later.
The old Bill Vukovic stat.
No F1 pod is complete without it. The last winner of her reign was obviously Max in Holland, and he was also the last world champion under her reign. The first was Ascari in 52. We know we like some numerical stats, so the number of races held during her reign in Formula One were 1,057. Under which, in those 1,057 races, 47,540 points were earned from all drivers in all those races. Slightly more than Nicholas Latifi has ever accumulated.
Don't. Man, you brought Gotifi into this. I got a stat on Gotifi later, but we'll get to it. But man.
So, yeah, I mean, we didn't want to go too deep into it. Have to acknowledge it. It's just a ridiculous amount of time. I mean, essentially, pulling together the stats of F1 for her reign is almost like pulling together the stats of F1. Because, literally, it was only about a year that she wasn't on the throne for, which is just absolutely crazy. So, yeah, super sad, but we will move on through some of the other things that we saw coming up during the week.
Yeah, so actually, could you hit the Colton Herta thing? Because
this came up.
This came up, and you did it. I just got to give Rob a little kudos. I work with this guy who likes to call him kudos. I don't know what a kudu is, but so, and so he wrote a blog this week on the Dirty Side deck chair, and it was fantastic. Now, Rob writes pretty much all the blogs. He really had this idea to create the blog, and I think most of them are tremendous, honestly. This one, though, was like a must-read. And so if you haven't gone to understand the whole super license thing, please go check it out. You obviously can find it at our website, dirtysideofthetrack.com. But Rob, tell people a little bit about it, because I thought it was just really well done.
Oh, well, thank you. You got me blushing now. It's a good job we don't put these out on YouTube. Okay, so, well, we do, just not with the video. So really, I saw a story at the beginning of the week, which was this whole kind of sort of pseudo outrage like Twitter likes to have about, they can't just give Colton a super license, he hasn't earned it, blah, 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 blah. I was like, why hasn't he earned it? I didn't really know what the super license was all about. I knew about its existence, but didn't know what you had to do to get one. So it kind of took me off down a rabbit hole of researching what the heck you need to do. And then I just turned that research into a blog. So I'm not going to read the whole blog out, but essentially the spirit of it is you need to get 6 things in order to get a super license. You need to be 18. You need to have an international grade A competition license. Bizarre one. You've got to have a real driving license from your home country. I mean, who cares?
Does anyone not have that?
I know, but who cares if you can't parallel park at the grocery store? I mean, You don't really need that to drive an F1 car. But anyway, you must have that. You've got to pass an FIA theory test. You must have completed at least 80% of each of the 2 full single-seater championships you must have completed. And I kind of take the blog kind of takes this all from the view of Colton to try to work out where he's not ticking all the boxes, and he's essentially ticking all of these. What you get to then is you must have accumulated 40 super license points over the past 3 seasons. I was like, okay, well, surely to goodness he's doing really well. He must have done. And this is where the debate starts to rage. So sliding scale of where you get your super license points from. You get a big chunk of points for F2. So if you win F2, you get 40 points. I mean, boom. If you become F2 champion, you've automatically got enough points to get a super license. Whereas if you're in karting, you get something like 2 points for winning the national championship. So you're never going to get into Formula One by just driving karts around. But when you look at Indy, if you win Indy, you do get 40 points as well. So that's pretty, that's like toe-to-toe with F2. But if you finish second or third in the F2 championships, you also get 40. So just coming third in the F2 championships is enough to get you a super license. Indy, it just starts dropping off. You get 30, then you get 20 for third. And the further you go down that championship, the smaller and smaller they become. Meaning
they think they're just handing out positions to people who walk in off the street?
I don't. There's no official word on why. Some people believe that because there's too much reliance on ovals in IndyCar and the oval experience won't translate to the high level of driving skill that they say you're going to need in F1, they're saying that's why they skew it a little bit. But the biggest irony of all, which, again, read the blog and you'll see the details on this, is that Colton actually excels in the non-oval races. If you actually accumulate all of his points and you remove the ovals out of the calendar, then he's much higher up, and he's much higher up into positions that would get him his super license. So I think that's where the discussion is raging on at the moment. They're saying, look, this kid ticks 5 out of 6 boxes. On the 6th box, he only doesn't because you say he drives in circles too much. But if you actually remove all the circles that he drives in, which he isn't very good on anyway, and look at the road races and the kind of the tracks that are more akin to an F1 track, he excels. So
I think that's a hard one, right? Like there's the letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law. And this is a debate I think a lot of people get into in real life fairly regularly. And I don't just mean with the law, but with rules. And so it's a hard one because I totally see the argument that says he's good at these tracks. He ticks the 6th box, if you think of it that way. But at the same time, the rule was written for a reason. And if we're going to just start undoing the rules at the sake of a team who wants to bring someone over from the U.S., so it's a hard one. I actually don't even, quite honestly, to me, I'll let him make a decision. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. Weirdly, I don't care how it ends up happening. What about you? I mean, what is your thought?
No, I'm kind of with you. It's kind of like, if they decide to say no, you haven't got enough super license points, then I can see why they're going to say no. If they say, we're going to give you it because this rule was set back in the 19 whenevers when Indy literally only had ovals, I think, then if they decide to bend the rule for that one, I'll go, okay, I can see why they did it. I like you. I'm not really going to get kind of angry either way.
Yeah, I got other things to get angry about. But something to be excited about. This Wednesday, and just for all of the Dirty Siders who are here each week, yes, we are going to dine out on this sound clip for another year probably. But this coming Wednesday...
This is Jacques Villeneuve, and you're listening to The Dirty Side of the Track.
Jacques Villeneuve will be testing last year's Alpine in Monza. I thought that was cool. So he's going to test last year's Alpine A521, apparently, was the name of last year's car, on Wednesday in Monza. It'll be the first time that the 51-year-old has driven a nearly contemporary F1 car since his last race in 2006. I thought that was cool when I saw that he'd be out there tootling around Monza in last year's Alpine. So I just thought that was neat that he'd be doing that test.
He could still get more points than Latifi.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes. And we're not here for Latifi slander. It's just at this point, it's the truth. And he's a great guy. And we've learned for sure the door is closed. He's done. He cannot race an F1 anymore. Okay. Anyway, speaking of people maybe going down and coming up in and out of F1, the F2 championship was determined this week. So congratulations to Felipe Drugovich. I was almost right on that. And so what's interesting, if you look at the past F2 champions, and for anybody who may be newer to F1, F2 is effectively the minor league for F1. It's the feeder series, and I want to show you what I mean by that. Here are some of the past F2 champions. So obviously, last year, Oscar Piastri and all of the hullabaloo about him this year and where his seat would be. He didn't come right into F1, but obviously he has a ride now. For next year, the 2020 champion was Mick Schumacher, who is obviously driving for Haas straight away from that win. The 2019 champion was Nick De Vries. We're going to talk more about Nick in a second because obviously he raced today, but he won the 2019 championship. 2018, a fella you might have heard of named George Russell, who apparently cannot stop getting on the podium or in the top five. He is a magnet for the front of the grid. And then the 2017 F2 champion was Charles Leclerc. So, the F2 championship means something. And so congrats to Felipe. I hope he gets a seat somewhere or whatever he has to do to make that happen. But it brought up a lot about Nick when I saw this happen because it happened before today's race, obviously. So a lot of people were talking about the excitement about Nick De Vries, and then we found out yesterday he'd be taking the seat for Alex Albon, who decided to have his appendix removed to be lighter in the car. And so Nick, there's a lot of people on both sides very polarized about Nick De Vries, and not just because he sits next to Toto Wolff in the garage and looks just like him, but because he's 27 years old. That's old for a rookie. Max, by the way, so they're both Dutch. Max is 24. And so, that's a big, to be 3 years older than the guy who is the current champion, and you're just getting started, that's a big difference. And someone else who may argue the other side of the Nick De Vries coin is he was in Formula E this year. And he raced on the Mercedes Formula E team, the same team as Stoffel Van Dorn, who was the champion. Nick had half the points, 106 versus 213. So you can make the argument one way or the other about Nick being in F1 and what that may mean. Obviously, I think we all know there'll be a Williams seat open at the end of this year. We talk about Latifi, but I found it fascinating, all of the talk about Nick before even him joining the weekend.
Yeah, and we'll absolutely dig into De Vries a bit more. So before we move over to the race, it wouldn't be a news and social segment if we didn't let you loose on your late night YouTube habits. So what did you find for us this week?
I only have three. I'll go fast. The Williams launched the head-to-head Lad Bible pit stop time challenge. It was actually dropped like the day of Zandvoort, so I didn't see it. It's okay. It's about 8 minutes. It's clearly a guy who is now nearing the end of his F1 career and a guy who's about to have his appendix removed, and it was okay. Lollipop Man, if you guys aren't following Lollipop Man on Twitter and watching his videos or her videos, whatever it may be, on Twitter and YouTube, so good. The start inventing one with Carlos after last week's race when they forgot his tires. The Carlos Sainz Lab, and on Discord, Lee and I were going back and forth on this one because the small points were so good. The Carlos Sainz Lab, and then it was underneath it, for Advanced Racing Technology. And the acronym of that is obviously FART. So the 5-year-old in me found that hilarious, started venting. He made up a 3-wheel car so they could be ready for the pit stop. Anyway, and the last thing, For those who are worried about losing Danny Rick for next year, there was a great video that F1 did on the Formula One channel. Danny Rick remembers his awesome Monza win in their, quote, Through the Visor series. For me, that was the highlight of the week. Just hearing his excitement and watching him win last year at Monza. Even when they played the Lando radio towards the end, like, can we flip positions? Can he go faster? Danny Rick kind of brushed it off and he goes, oh yeah, it's, heat of the moment kind of thing, and smiles wryly. Anyhow, a couple 3 videos to check out, but definitely the Danny Rick one on Formula One.
And Danny Rick, of course, remembering his win from last year, which he didn't get anywhere close to repeating today. So on that awesome segue.
Yes.
We're moving to race week. Now, Brian and I, for a variety of different reasons, didn't get a full-on view of all of free practice, but distilling FP 1, 2, and 3 down into kind of one little bite-sized segment, the things that stood out for me, Brian, before I hand over to you, given that I didn't see a big deal of it, but skinny wings, I mean, those weren't even wings. They were just like lines of duct tape that were just being put across the top to give an image of a wing, because those things were running ridiculously low. Like we know, temple of speed, you do not need any downforce. I wasn't a big fan of that yellow random bit on the Ferrari. When they were giving the teasers and they were showing them in the yellow overalls, and there were some people on social media showing like the classic old yellow Ferrari from back in the day, I was like, this is going to be so cool if they do a yellow Ferrari. It's going to be awesome. And they just didn't commit to it. They just changed one body panel for yellow, I think, and it just looked like one of those cars that has been to the kind of chop shop and had like a body panel replaced, and they
Really?
couldn't find the matching color.
Wow.
It just did you like it?
I was all right. I loved the wing. I thought the wing was fire. The black wing with the yellow Ferrari across it, that they should keep the rest of the year. That was phenomenal to me. But I get your point on the yellow bit on the back. It's fine.
And then the speed trap stuff that we started seeing just actually gave me... I was looking at the speed trap stuff from FP2 and was like, oh, okay. I found it really interesting. We had Alfa Romeo at the top of the speed trap. Mercedes had moved up a bit since FP1, where they'd been falling behind. Hazard found a lot of pace, but Alpine were not looking quick at all. I was like, well, this has got to be sandbagging, because coming into this weekend, we're all like,
Had to be.
well, Red Bull are going to be like a rocket ship. Doesn't matter whether Max has to start from the back of the grid or to start from the different country. He's going to basically come all the way through the field no matter where he is. But Alpine was the one being touted to be right up there. And in practice, they did not look good.
I thought it was sandbagging. I was all in on Alpine. On Formula Market, I owned a bunch of shares. I own a bunch of shares, still do. I'll have to go sell them shortly, of Fernando. And is my constructor in the regular Formula fantasy game Alpine? Yep. How'd that turn out? Negative points. So I bought in on it too, and I thought they were sandbagging it. I expected that slippery Alpine to show up, and then nope.
Yeah, nothing. And then we got into the... I was rushing back from coaching my daughter's soccer team, and I literally came flying in through the door to see the end of Q2. So I'll let you take us through Q1 and Q2, but the theme of the day was really more penalties.
Oh my God, it was so hard to figure out what was happening the whole day. So yeah, obviously we learned that morning that Nick DeVries would sub in for Alex at Williams. And there were 9 cars taking grid penalties, so nobody knew. After quali was over, Esteban made a great Twitter joke, said, I still have no clue where I'm starting tomorrow. And then an hour later, Pierre made the same joke, had more likes, and if they end up being teammates, that'll be awkward. But so, just because of Twitter, I'm sure. But so, Q1, we lost both Haas's and both Aston Martins and Nicky Latifi. But Nick DeVries made it through. Even though he had a track limits, which took off his last lap, he still was 15th. So it is so bad. I mean, again, we've talked a lot about this. At times, you can't compare team to team. The cars are different, but you can always compare intra-team. And so the teammate battles are really things that come down to it. I know we did we may have to do this again at some point. We did a big Alpha Tauri kind of review in the middle of the year because there was so much what's Yuki doing versus Pierre and blah, blah, blah. So when Nick DeVries comes in straight out of having a coffee in a motorhome, they plop him in the car for Q1, and he out-qualifies the guy who's been driving that car for years. That's bad. Like, to me, that was... we all knew it. But that was the end. Like, we should be on the Nicky Latifi farewell bandwagon the rest of the year. Thank you. He seems like a great guy. Appreciate your contributions. Next. And so that was just brutal. And then in Q2, both Alfa Romeos went out. Yuki didn't set a time. Nick went out. And then here's where I got real confused. Now Esteban went out. And so the Alpines are not fast. This was when I realized we were going to have a problem. And the announcers were confused by the Alpine going out as well. They're like, "Oh, we expected them to be, faster here." So it was the realization that I had made some bad decisions in a fantasy perspective at the end of Q2.
Yeah, and I didn't even get to change my team this week. I'd just...
Oh, is that what happened? Okay, all right.
You can check the lineup. I mean,
just because you played the same team doesn't mean you didn't change it.
It definitely means I didn't change it.
But you could have accessed it. Hold on, that came out wrong. Hang on. Hold on a second.
I'm not sure you understand how change works, Brian.
Hang on a second. I think I screwed this up here. All right. Hey, that's mean. You can't laugh at me. So what I meant was you had the opportunity to change, and leaving it the same is not the same as not accessing it. So I think
that's a fair accusation. I mean, it didn't. I literally, like I say, I had zero time on Saturday morning.
I was running and playing soccer and coaching.
I was doing like athletic stuff rather than just sitting on my couch watching quality.
You didn't know this would happen, say, Friday night? All right, then.
Hadn't had FP3 then. You can't change your lineup until FP3.
Yeah, you can. I changed days in advance. So what happened in Q3?
Anyway, Q3 was just a bit of a damp squib because, I don't know, with all the penalties coming through, lots of people didn't really seem to be... It felt like nobody was really going for it, and everyone just sort of went, do you know what? It's Italy. Let Charles have it. Everyone can be happy, and we'll turn up for a race tomorrow and then try and work out where the hell everyone's starting from. Because it just didn't feel... I don't know. Maybe I just... How did you feel about quali? It didn't really have that kind of edge to it.
If I'm being honest, we can get into the race now because Rob and I differ a little bit on the race. To me, it portended a slightly boring race. It was the foreshadowing to say this is not going to be the best race you're going to watch. And Rob thought the race today was great. So, or at least you enjoyed the overtakes, you told me as we were getting warmed up here.
Yeah. You kind of said, well, let's try not to go in reverse here of the whole thing, but you kind of said the ending kind of was a perfect ending for an awful race.
Started with a boring quali, closed with a safety car finish.
So I actually
And I know, sorry, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I loved the vast majority of the race. Now, you have to temper this with, if you went into this weekend expecting any excitement at the front, then... I don't know. I was going to say something very harsh that you just don't understand Formula One at the moment because that Red Bull rocket ship was never going to do anything other than drive off into the distance. We get some little bits, as we'll cover as we go through it, where it looked like maybe a strategy could develop, but that car's just too quick. And at the Temple of Speed, nothing is ever happening other than Max winning that, right? So if you just take that as a given, then you think probably Charles with his car is likely to be in at 2, but probably not going to be challenging Max that much. So for me, if I was able to zone out like the race win excitement, from what happened from kind of 3rd all the way down to almost 15th, we had, I don't have the stats, but what felt like more overtakes than I've seen in a very long time. These so-called DRS trains materialized for maybe like a lap or two, but then somebody was able to break it, especially at that first corner. We had so many overtakes down into corner 1. So yeah, let's just do our normal thing and go through it. I loved it. I hated the way it ended, but we'll give some airtime to that when we get to the end, right?
Yeah, so it was a hot day at Monza. Mixed up grid, which, as everybody knows, I love. I love the mixed up grid, whether it's because of rain, and I hate the way they do engine penalties and grid penalties. But when it does happen, what happens is you get kind of people out of order in terms of race pace. So yes, Rob, I agree there were overtakes. That normally is what fuels me for the first third of one of these races. If wet quali, grid penalty, something, you just know the race is going to be fun to watch. So I get it. Lando, holy crap, he found reverse. When they dropped the lights out, he found reverse and just was swallowed up. Maybe he wasn't used to not starting in 7th, so he was starting further up. I actually honestly thought,
from the camera angle, I thought he'd stalled it.
I thought he had stopped. I thought the car was motionless.
Same here. Like everyone was just swarming past him. I was like, "Oh, Lando's going to get like almost. Does it count as a did not start if you can't get away from the grid?" But then no, it is moving just really slowly.
Would you remember back in the day there was a car that was left on its jacks on the grid, and the mechanics had to clear it. They'd forgotten to take the car off jacks, and everyone went by. That's what I thought had happened. I thought they left him up. His wheels were off the ground. Like, what? And then, yes, just he had a little bad start there. And then Max, and I agree with you, Rob, we all kind of expected first to be Max's. And with only a 5 grid drop penalty, I mean, we expected him to fuel power through. I didn't think he'd be up to third by the second lap, but I mean, that guy, he's got to be one of the top 3 drivers. He's the champion, and he's in one of the best car.
Yeah,
and the track that suits him.
If you wanted him to get snared up and have that thing slow down, what really needed to happen was almost the exact opposite of what did when you watch the replay of the start from overhead, which is that, thankfully we avoided any massive first corner incidents, which is quite rare at Monza, really, when you've got all those cars going into a very, very small gap. 2 of them don't really fit side by side around that chicane these days with the size of the cars. But people got, especially moving out the way of Lando, the way various cars bogged each other down actually allowed Max to get a couple of places jumped straight away. So anybody wanting him to be beached in 7th or other cars come around him, that was already ruled out because he'd already had a great start. And then off we went. And then as the trailing set come through, poor old Valtteri Bottas gets zero luck at all. So not only does he get tagged by K-Mag going into the chicane, as he then backs out of it, everyone else swarms past him. And as he tries to then come on the inside to regain the positions he's just lost, Lewis has just gone for a Sunday afternoon drive across the chicane, kind of comes in front of him and blocks him. And Bottas ends up, I think, in 20th.
He was 20th. I thought he had damage. I was sure he may have had damage. I haven't heard Paul's report. You have, but I don't know if I thought he had 20th. Like, what happened to Valtteri? And I mean, we saw what happened, but I figured he'd had wing or floor damage from that hit with K-Mag, and then just, bad luck. And then we did get some DRS trains, and like you said, I agree with you. They didn't last super long, but we got some big ones. I mean, we had lap 7, we had Danny, Rick, Pierre, Lando, Fernando, Nick, we had Zhou Guanyu, and then Carlos Sainz. All in a row, all within DRS of each other. Yeah. Damn, that's a long DRS train.
And even when you take the DRS out, I think I've put the stat down here that we had 5 seconds covering 10th to 18th.
Yeah.
I mean, it was compact. Normally kind of Monza opens out pretty quickly, but they were following each other. We had, like you say, that DRS train, and then in comes Perez, like super early.
Super early.
I thought he was out. When they put those hards on, that front right was on fire. I'm like, well, they're going to tell him to pull the car over now. I mean, car's on fire. But,
it stayed on fire. That was the best part. He's like a lap in, and it's still flames coming out.
Yeah, it was. But again, just for people might be new to it, Monza was exceptionally hot. And there's not a lot of braking, so if you can get onto the straights, you get a huge cooling effect from just the amount of wind that's rushing through these things. So they just kept going, and the fire went out eventually. So I think it was only a couple of laps it lasted.
Yeah, not even. And I'd like to formally, as a lot of you know, I'm the Twitter intern. I put a poll out yesterday to ask how Ferrari would screw up the race. And at this point, they got on Charles' radio and they said, if Max goes to plan C, are you okay with plan B? And I'm like, what? Now they got other team strategies, and I'm starting to think they're going to mess it up. They didn't. I don't think Ferrari screwed any. I think they actually did a good job today.
Yeah.
So I'd like to apologize to all the Tifosi out there who are mad at me for putting that poll out. I should have had another option that said none, they'll do great, because they did. But and then Sainz, I was kind of envious of him. You never want to start last in your team's home Grand Prix. But he was passing people left and right. You have to think he had a blast in that car. There's got to be a part of a racing driver who just lives to pass people. And he started in the 18th and just was passing people left and right. If I were him, he had to have had the biggest smile on his face. I would have been smooth operating the whole way.
There were some great moves as well. It wasn't just like pure pace differential. By lap 10th, he's lap 10, he's up to 7th. Then he puts a great move on Lando to get into 6th, and he was passing people in like any part of the track. The 2 chicanes, the straights, going around the outside of corner name escapes me, maybe the Lesmos, but it just didn't matter. He just seemed to have this turbo on and was just flying. It was superb to watch.
When he pulled up behind Lando, I was hoping it to get a little spicy, as friends would kind of do. Lando did kind of move, but in Carlos's helmet, this is going. Smooth operator! the whole time. He was passing people. God, it was fun watching Carlos.
It was almost like watching. Like some of those arcade games that you play, when you fall back down the pack, it gives you like an artificial boost to help you get back up to the front again. It was just like Sainz was just, and he just kept going, and he eventually by lap 12 he's up into 5th. It's like, wow. And then we got virtual safety car. Who was it who came to a standstill? It was Seb, wasn't it?
Yeah, Seb's was the first one. Yep.
Yeah, Seb, and we'll discuss Danny in a bit, but Seb did a great job of parking that in somewhere that
perfect.
was going to be easy.
Not only that, he angled it correctly too. So he literally like pulled it so it was ready to be rolled backwards straight away behind the barrier. I mean, yeah, that was a good move. And then Ferrari pitted Charles, and I was sitting here thinking, oh God, was this a mistake? And it worked. It worked perfect the way they did it. It
did. I mean, it does. We'll come to the end of the race. It minimized their loss to Max. Max was already starting to pull away at this point, but I thought this was a really good shout to get in, get out. That was great. While that was all going on, Sainz gets past Danny Rick into 4th now. I mean, this guy started 18th, and we're only on lap 13. I mean, it was just a
fast car drive. And a guy just on it. It was fun to watch.
But then we had what I thought was going to be your poll answer. Lap 16.
Oh God!
We get the team radio message to Charles to say, "Hey, stop! Was it stop short shifting?"
Yes.
Stop short shifting. And he's like, I can't. I have to drive the car this way. I'm like, oh God, they've seen something in the telemetry. They've seen something in the engine is being stressed. And I think the stat at the beginning was Monza is 83% full throttle. So if there's something starting to creak with your engine, it's usually exposed at Monza because you're just flat out. Yeah. So I was like, oh no, please don't. But that all seemed to go away. We never heard of that again in the race. So
yeah, on Discord as we were prepping. JP had a great comment. His ICE would become an ECE. His internal combustion engine could become an external combustion engine. Yeah, at this point, one last, we'll hit Gotifi a couple times. But by lap 18, Nick DeVries driving along, tootling along in 9th, doing a great job.
Yeah.
Mickey had fallen to 19th, and Seb had retired. He'd fallen to last. How did that happen so fast?
I don't know. And then lap 20, everyone looked at the big clock on the wall and realised it was pit stop o'clock. And everyone, well, not everyone, I mean, literally the field almost split down the centre, that half of the field decided now was the window, and then the rest of them did it a few laps later. But Sainz just kept going. He wanted to push the mediums out as far as he could go and just said, look, I'm good. I'm going to run the mediums until I can move to soft.
Crofty goes, can they make the softs last that long? And I'm literally like Leo DiCaprio pointing at the TV in that meme. I go like, Max is still out there on softs, 25 laps. Yes, the answer is yes, unless the tire deg is that much worse on a Ferrari than the Red Bull. But I'm literally looking at a guy who just did the same amount. So, and then Karun Chandok copied it, jumped in, and basically said what I said. So I don't know if he has a open mic in my living room, but he totally.
Oh, definitely. I think he takes. I think most of the Sky team take all of their commentary from you, Brian.
It feels like it. I mean, when they repeat 100%. Things, I'm thinking.
Now, I missed when it happened. I noted it down because they happened to call out that Russell was on the hards. He must have stopped somewhere in that whole merry-go-round of pit stops. Yep. But hards just seemed a weird choice.
Yeah, he complained about him in the cool-down room even. They asked him how the hards work. He goes, not well.
Yeah, he pulled that great British face that I really want to swear and say they're terrible right now, but I'm going to be very British and say, yes, not well. They didn't turn out too well for me.
Yeah, and then right after that, Carlos then did go onto the softs, and we thought, all right, let's see how this all ends up here at the end of the race. It was interesting because on lap 33, Mercedes and their strategy machine told George he will finish 5 seconds ahead of Carlos for third. And I'm like, that is really accurate prediction to see what happens. And it's worth noting at the final bell, George Russell, I can't get it at all. He finished third. Do you know who finished fourth? Carlos.
Well, we'll get that, yeah. But
do you know what the difference between them was?
Well, nothing, because it was safety car. It was probably about 0.1 second.
They attributed it to 2 seconds. So without the safety car, they probably would have been bang on. But anyway.
No, they wouldn't. And we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
And then we just had, a round of just various different overtakes. A lot of these overtakes were mainly because people are artificially ahead of each other due to pit stops and orders of pit stops and freshness of tyres. But do you know what? An overtake's an overtake. It wasn't a blue flag. They are racing positions. So I'm still really happy at this point.
I'm not.
I don't know why you're not at this point. I mean, other than the fact that nothing's going on for the win, we're seeing lots and lots of on-track action.
But we knew Max would win. There wasn't even like good battle for second, nor really third. And in my mind, the overtakes happened at the beginning because of the jumbled up grid, and then the rest were because of pit stops. And no one, after being overtaken, fought back and took the position back, it felt like. I agree there were overtakes. So I'm not saying it was the most boring race ever. I'm not. But they were following close. We had some trains. We had a lot of overtakes into turn one. I loved it. It was exciting into turn one. But no one ever fought back and took the position back. To me, the most exciting action of the entire race, and maybe I'm being Debbie Downer here, but it reminded me of Australia this year, where it just it didn't hold your attention.
Oh, no.
I know. Well, Lando pitted. Lap 36. Lando goes into the pits and has a horrible 5-second pit stop. Horrible for a lot of reasons. One, you obviously don't want to be stuck in the pits that long, but two, dropped him right into traffic. And he dropped right behind Danny Rick. Pierre Gasly takes him around that chicane. And as they're battling, and it was a great battle, Lewis Hamilton was behind both of them. And it's like, oh, you didn't notice me? Through goes Hamilton, and he takes both of them at the same time. And he like wedges Lando in behind Pierre and just past him. I'm knocking my microphone over. I'm so excited. That was the highlight of the race for me, was Lando exiting the pits after a bad stop.
Literally only like a lap later, though, we had one of the highlights for me, which was Mick Schumacher proving the absolute limit of grip on those tyres when he took Latifi, because he got down into turn one, just decided that brakes aren't a thing that are needed to get around this corner. And then when he realised he was going too fast and he put the brakes on, there's smoke everywhere. I'm like, he's going to spin, they're going to collide. And he literally must have been at the 99th percentile of grip, because he somehow clung to it. Then Latifi got him back on the next corner, and then Mick got him back on the next one. And that was an awesome little exchange as Mick went flying past them. And here's where I'm going to disagree with you about there was no challenge for the podium. Right at this point now, lap 43, we've got 10 laps left. You've got Russell sitting on the hards, not really going anywhere. Sainz is catching at a rate that is going to put him within striking distance with maybe 2 laps of the race left. So now George is going to have to fend off Sainz for 2 laps on fresher tyres. We're going to get 2 Ferraris on the podium at Monza by the looks of things. Yeah, Max has gone. There was nothing we could probably do about that. So
we knew that was going to happen.
The best Ferrari can hope for is 2 and 3, and it looks like it's going to happen because Mercedes have gone and put those concrete blocks on George, which somebody better with more knowledge than me can help me understand this. At one point, the hards were going faster than Leclerc, who was on the softs, and they looked like the amazing tyre to be on, and that seemed to last for about a lap before all of a sudden they were the worst tyre to be on again. But the tyres, whether it's George's driving style or not, I don't know, but Sainz was getting him. He was going to be within striking distance with 2 laps left. And that was, to me, was developing into because Charles was now on brand new softs, was supposed to be hunting down. He'd pitted, they rolled the dice, they had a free stop, they took the fresh softs, I think they were scrubbed softs to try and chase down Max.
Yep.
So now we've got 2 chase downs are about to happen. The first chase down didn't even come close to happening. Not even close. At his best, he was eking out 0.2 seconds on Max when he needed to be taking a second a lap out to even get within touching distance.
Which we saw. Max built such a lead that when the safety car came out, he hadn't caught the safety car yet. He had no problem pitting and coming back out in first. He didn't even lose track position by hitting the pits. So he was that far ahead.
Well, now you've jumped the gun. You've just jumped the gun as to the safety car, right?
Well,
so we've
hit
got
the
this
second one. I'm just telling you, it was a boring race.
We've got the chase down happening, and it all gets destroyed. It gets destroyed by Danny Rick. Danny Rick, I don't know. I've never driven a Formula One car. It looked like he maybe had other options of where he could have pulled that thing over. He managed to pull it over in an area where he was not very, very close to an entry or exit area. He also apparently left it in gear.
Well, for all we know, he had a problem with the gearbox. I mean, we don't know.
Maybe. But that kills it. That kills it because everybody gets a chance to pit. Basically, everybody dives in, apart from De Vries that just gambles that it's going to finish under the safety car, which means that they're going to guarantee him a points scoring position. So he kind of pootled around for a bit thinking, are we going to go racing? Aren't we going to go racing? And Twitter exploded with a whole, when it's Max winning, they decide not to end a safety car. I was like, oh my God, guys. Everyone goes nuts at the end of last year because they didn't follow the rules. And this year, when they do follow the rules, everyone goes nuts again. So there's no pleasing Formula One Twitter. However, while I agree that they followed the rules today, because there's no other option really open to them, I think they do have to have a look at this whole, how could you do something different so that we don't end under safety car? One of the options doing the rounds on Twitter was kind of, once you're within X% of the end of the race, just automatic red flag it. Take it out of the decision of the race director. Say, once you got across this threshold of X amount of the races left, you just red flag it. Now, you could decide that standing start isn't fair, and you could simulate what would happen under a safety car restart, and you could just do a rolling start and let the leader take them round and be in control of restarting. I think I'd be pretty okay with that.
I mean, actually, so I part of me was yelling at the TV, let the two lapped cars between Max and Charles through and then start it real fast. This is a motor race. We want to go motor racing. So part of me was doing that because I love just beating myself up. Part of me said, well, this race was, the quali was boring. The race was boring. We're going to end under safety car. I had a friend for the first time watching a Formula One race today and was texting me furiously. He goes, this is boring. And I said, I'm really sorry. It was not the worst race. It was not the best. Your idea that it was fun because there were all these overtakes is wrong. I actually think that the bigger thing I would ask is, what do we think about the VSCs and the safety cars and the free and cheap pit stops? It almost seems like a good topic. Maybe we could handle in, 100 seconds of DRS.
Yeah, maybe. When we do that later.
A special guest. No, we have a special guest on, and we're going to hit that as one of our topics from a person who knows about F1. So stay tuned for that. I don't know. I mean, to me, here are my headlines, Rob.
So you're not going to answer my question?
No, I'm not. The rules are the rules. If you finish under safety car, you finish under safety car.
That wasn't the question I asked you. You're so down today, aren't you, about this race? You're not even going to listen to the questions.
I heard it. What would you do? But at 4% left, you have to go to safety car.
In order to not finish a car under a safety car, what would you like to see happen? Or are you quite
finish
happy
it under
to say
safety car? Those are the rules.
No, I said if they could change the rules.
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't. You like to see races ended under safety car.
But it is what it is.
No. If you could change the rules,
right? I would not red flag it. I would not. It's you didn't. Why? You go the whole weekend, okay? If you're in first, let's pretend there's more parity. For a second. And let's say a driver like Lando, who would never won a race and has never won a race, is in front and has earned it, okay? Through whatever reasons, more parity. So let's forget Max is so dominant and the Red Bulls are so fast. He earned it, okay? And let's say you get to the point where there's 5% or 10% of the race left. Let's say 10%. So 53 laps here, there's 5 laps left. You say, all right, we're under safety car, but at this point, because we're still under safety car, regardless if we'd have a lap or 2 left, we're going red flag, and we're going to get a new start. And I don't care if it's rolling start, like you said, simulated, like a safety car start or a standing start. You've just screwed the guy who earned his way through the weekend and up to first, because now the person behind him has chosen whatever tires they want. They're starting on a lighter fuel. The cars who might have had strategic blunders are back in it because they're starting right behind him. So I don't like neutralizing the advantage someone earned. So no, I guess my answer is it is what it is.
Okay, so my actual question to you was, are you happy?
Would I change it? No.
You wouldn't change it. So you just say that sometimes races end under safety car, and so be it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the same way last year's Abu Dhabi bothered me. It was because we didn't follow the rules.
Yeah.
This year we followed the rules, it was boring. SH stuff happens.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just don't like seeing races end in a safety car. It feels like it shouldn't happen.
I'm with you, but to me, a lot of things happen in life that aren't perfect, but this rule works for the entirety of the rest of the race. And if you've earned your position, you shouldn't lose it because of the entertainment value you're trying to provide someone. That's my opinion.
But on that same vein, if you are that Lando and the safety car happens, I don't know, with 10 laps left, so there's enough time to go racing again, and you go for the restart, and the guy behind went in and got the new tyres, and you couldn't, then you're happy for Lando to lose.
Car. You're assuming a safety car as well, and to me, you shouldn't assume that.
No, I'm saying, if there is, in your example, right, you don't want Lando to lose the lead because there's a safety car at the end, right? And there's not enough time to go racing again. He should be allowed to finish the race under safety car and win his race. Cool. If that same safety car happens earlier in the race, so there is enough time to go racing again, it's still screwed his race. Because
Right.
he's likely he's given up all the advantage that he eked out, which I think is kind of what we talked to when we get to 100 seconds later. Is kind of what we had fun talking to Rob about, which was like, there's two things at play here. One, ending on a safety car just feels so disappointing.
I agree, totally agree.
And
I'm not disagreeing with the feel.
Yeah. And the second point is safety cars themselves just feel at the moment like they interfere with the race too much as well. So. Yeah, so there we are. I think
I don't want to call myself a purist, but I don't know why we would change it. It's like baseball is making the bases bigger. Why? I don't like it. There's certain things that just don't make sense. They're trying to change certain rules to make it more entertaining. And in certain cases you do. Like slow pitching, I get that in baseball, you got to get rid of. But to me, safety car. You finish on the safety car, all right. So you get a couple formation laps at the end to wave to people. I don't know. Yeah, I know it's unpopular. I'm sure I'm going to lose the popularity debate. Here,
I was explaining to Jim in the bar today. He said, look, races can't be allowed to end like that. I was like, well, yeah, they can. They always have ever since I've watched it. It's just one of those things that, unfortunately, depending when a safety car is, you may or may not go racing again.
I'm jealous you do the bar thing at 9 a.m. I really am. Like, it's great. I got to get that set up here. Hey, so to me, just to close it before we get to pit lane, Paul, for me, the summary is, again, Max's domination. Whether it's on a percentage or nominal amount of victories, he's on target to set a bunch of records this year. And having a fast car, you could see the difference off where Checo was. And so to me, Max is that great.
Yeah.
He deserves the kudos, or as I said earlier, kudos. He's doing amazing. More power to him. However, I think there's one big story developing that I think everyone sees, but it's worth highlighting. It's George. And I joked about it, how he always seems to manage to rock up to the podium and be like, hey, guys, can I be third? All right, great. And he is consistent. He's rarely talked about during the race anymore because he's, again, witness protection, somehow finishing in an amazing fashion. So he is currently fourth in the driver's title. Fourth. He's 7 points behind Checo. That's not far. And then it gets even better. Checo's only 9 behind Charles. 9. So George is 16 points behind second, and he hasn't won anything.
That little bit that you put on the end there, that's the cherry on the cake for me. Like, everything else you just said is absolutely right. I can't believe where George is. He's been so consistent, blah, 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 blah. But we could be looking at a guy that could finish second in the World Drivers' Championship and not win a single race all season.
Not a race. Oh. Amazing. So I think, to me, that's just closing it for me. I don't know, Rob, anything else you want to add?
I love the fact that
Monza?
I think we've managed to get to the big ticket. I can't even think of the word now. Target of 40th episode today, right? 40 episodes of me and you bozos on bar stools talking F1, and I like the fact that we didn't agree on the race today.
No, yeah, that's fine.
I think that's perfect. If we just sat here and kind of just both had the same view, it'd be boring. So.
Yeah. Well,
so you were wrong.
We had different opinions. Yeah, you were wrong. And
you were wrong.
You were wrong. You were boring too.
No,
I was the one who carried this episode.
All right.
Anyway. Actually, the person who actually carries all of our episodes is clearly Pit Lane Paul. Everybody loves his reports. We talk with 100 Seconds of DRS guests, and they always comment on how amazing Paul is. And before we give him a big head, let's just play his report from this week.
Hello all. Well, I don't know how to start this week's review. There's only one place to start, really, and that's for the tragic news on Tuesday of our Queen, Elizabeth II, leaving us. Now, I know for some of you over the pond, the whole monarchy is a little confusing. I won't lie, for us here, sometimes we're confused with it. But it's ours, and boy, personally, I'm quite proud of it, to be honest. She was a remarkable lady, and it's insane to think that somebody can impact you in such a way. Like, I had no idea why I felt like crying on Tuesday. I really don't, but... you don't know these people personally. You've never met them, but she's been there the whole life. It was the most ridiculous feeling ever. And she's a lady who the only person in the UK is allowed to drive a car without a licence. And she was also apparently an Arsenal fan, something that myself and Rob can both raise a glass to. She first became an owner at 6, owned an elephant, 2 giant turtles, a jaguar, and of course a pair of sloths. I personally loved her, and it does feel like we've lost somebody I knew dearly. It's so sad. Just to end this small section, this one is actually a little bit mind-blowing. The USA declared independence from Britain on July the 4th, 1776, some 246 years ago. If this is the starting point for US history, then that means the Queen was the Queen for nearly 30% of the time the USA has been a country.
Wow.
Just think of that. That's the impact she had. Thanks for everything. She was genuinely a hero. Anyway, moving on to the weekend of Formula One here in Italy. We take a few things from it, one of which is that pizza really is better here. FP1 and FP2 were the usual sessions, but nothing really bothered me too much. Again, like Spa, it was a weekend ran by penalties and a grid that was sort of half decided before we even got to, into Saturday. Saturday came, Alex Albon was out, Little Nick was in. Quali 1 saw him get into Quali 2, amazingly, and then dump his much more experienced teammate out. And I won't hate on any driver. These guys are machines, honestly. But Latifi, God, yeah, he must be embarrassed by that, Q2 usual suspects. Valtteri went out to tow Zhou, who qualified 14th but starts 9th. Ocon, I guess, lucked out, but the mix-up, I don't like it. Q3 was the same. Great to see Leclerc on pole. Is this the Ferrari fight back we've been waiting for? And it was amazing to think that 3 hours before the race today, we still weren't 100% sure what the final grid for today was going to be. I'm not a fan of these penalties. I really think it ruined Saturday. I love qualifying, but yeah. The race was a DRS train nightmare as expected. It was neither good or bad. It was about strategy. Max, as expected, moved quickly to the front. Look, in Italy, it's unlucky to place bread upside down on the table. So apparently Ferrari hospitality banned bread for today. And they managed to go without a big issue. And the strategy was good. For sure, the gamble of softs towards the end of the race was a gamble. But the reality was that he gets caught in past and finishes second regardless. So it was a gamble game with 0 to lose. But, to see any Ferrari driver on the podium here is great. So with Leclerc being up there in, Sainz really needed a safety car to lock in. Then come lap 48. Max had a free stop, put the softs on. Leclerc stopped to equal the tyres in Mercedes. Well, they just rolled the dice again. And then the last few laps, we all thought were going to be fun. It was, get the car clear, roll back to Abu Dhabi. They're going to let lap cars pass and blah. Look, not being critical of the battalions. Since batteries were invented in Italy, you would think they'd have a little bit more spark. They just sort of left the car. And it was inevitable it would finish in the most boring of finishes behind the safety car. So, yeah, disappointing. Further down, Aston Martin, shocker. Alpine failed to perform. Alfa Romeo showed a little glimpse of improvement, but again, no points. We got a few weeks off before Singapore. It's nice to have a break after those 3. I go back home for a few days, then I go out to Langkawi, a little island off Malaysia, to relax. But for now, Monza was average, but it's sort of insignificant this week, if I'm being honest. There are more important things to be sad about. I'll leave you all, folks, to have a good little break, and long live the Queen.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate that and your perspectives always, and great report, as always. And yes, long live the Queen.
So one last thing on there that he just reminded me of a stat that hit me in the face when they showed the drivers' standings, right? So De Vries by finishing in the points, yeah?
Yeah.
He has now put Latifi down
Yes.
To position 21 out of a 20
Thanks for stealing it.
Championship.
Was this in the notes that you took from me? Oh, yes.
I literally saw everyone mentioned it in the bar when it came up, and they showed the drivers' standings, and they went, "Ooh, no one wants to be 21st in a 20-man title."
He's the only driver on the grid to have not scored a point now, and just as an aside, technically Nico Hulkenberg raced a couple races for Seb to start, and so he's ahead of Nico. Nico's 22nd. But if Hulkenbach, the super sub, can get one more run, maybe he can get him a point, and then he could go out as 22nd on a 20-man grid. But yeah, that's rough.
Also, the race that really split opinion. You hated it. Paul said it was average. I said it was good. So 3 people, 3 opinions. Look at that.
And if we average them, Paul will be right. By the way, can we just give Zhou credit? He also scored in the points. 10th, Pierre 8th. And Lando, I got to highlight this. Where am I going to find it? So last week we did a stat. This is I'm sorry, I thought we were done, but last one here. This is from last week, okay? Lando Norris was 7th on the grid last week. He finished 7th in the race and is 7th in the Drivers' Championship as of last week. He has finished 7th in 4 of the last 5 races as of last week. Anyone have an idea where Lando finished this week? 7th. 5 out of 6, finishing 7th. Oh my God, Lando, Super Sevens. He should change his number from 4 to 7. I mean, it is unbelievable. And he's still 7th in the Drivers' Championship. He's well behind Lewis in 6th, and Esteban's 22 points behind him out of 88 for Lando. So he's 3/4 of his points in 7th. So anyway, Lando, the year of the 7s. We did a slingshot this week. We're recording this pretty quickly after the race because I can't get enough of American football, and it's kicking off right about now. So I'm going to go check out my football and watch my Packers. But as we do that, we wanted to record early. And last week we also did, and we were unable to highlight the Dirty Side of the Track Formula Top 5 from Zandvoort. And we need to do that because credit where credit's due. At least 3 characters. Andy E., 283 points, used a Mega Drive. Amazing. Tomas H. Tomas, you do this to me every week. I cannot pronounce the name of your team. I'm so sorry. Nazrak Nadamnik, 216. Simon S. with SI Racing, 215. Tied in 3rd with David T. With one of my favorite ones, which is Michael, I just sent you an email.
Michael, I just sent you an email.
I got to play that every time. It's so good. Michael, I sent you. And then 5th from last week, Ayal S. Nutcracker Wannabes, 214, right behind the 2 guys in 3rd. So great job to everybody from last week's Zandvoort. As I said, the league has not updated yet because for some reason counting numbers takes the fantasy site hours upon hours. so we don't have that yet, but it does look, you can look at individual teams. I can't let this slide. It looks like I beat Rob, regardless of whether he actually touched his team or not. I beat him again. Well, neither of us did well, 162 to 143. However, what that means for the season is after 16 races, 12 go Brian, 4 go Rob. That's a Max Verstappen type level of domination, buddy. I hate to say it.
You're not winning, though, are you?
No. Best I'd be in 2nd. But
yeah, so this is just teammate comparison, right? You're not actually winning. You're not winning the championship.
Car.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
12-4. I mean, anyway.
I know you too well, so I thought I got to let you win. Otherwise, you're going to cry all the time. So I can't put up with that.
I cry all the time anyway, man. I'm a very sensitive guy. So tell people about this amazing guest we have on 100 Seconds of DRS.
Yeah, so, I don't want to say too much about it because we're actually we cover it at the beginning of the interview with him, right? So maybe we don't. Maybe we just go into DRS.
No, we cover it a little bit.
We cover it right at the beginning, so I don't even want to give away the name or anything, although I think we've already mentioned the name Rob earlier on, and now I've just said it again. So we will now listen to our interview with Rob on 100 Seconds of DRS. Okay, so it's our pleasure to have another guest on 100 Seconds of DRS. Although, actually, I think we've got 2 guests on 100 Seconds of DRS, because I think I'm introducing you to both Rob Reed and Max Gladwell. It's the first time we've had a superhero to welcome to the show, so I'll go with Rob, because that's my preferred name, obviously. Welcome to the Dirty Side, Rob.
Oh, it's great to be here, guys. I'm a big fan of the show. So
we appreciate that. But can we clear up what Rob just mentioned? So it turns out Rob Reed is you. The real person, but you're on Twitter as Max Gladwell, yes?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram as Max Gladwell. I had a blog that I wrote back in the aughts about social media marketing, and just decided to create this persona, this Max Gladwell persona, because I could get the URL, I could get the Twitter handle, I could get everything, because there is no person in the world named Max Gladwell, apparently. Like when I Googled it, I couldn't find the person. So I'm like, all right, this is great. I'm just going to create this thing. And then it's just, it's just been my Twitter and my Instagram ever since.
So then with that as your alter ego or your name you use online, Rob Reed, I mean, you are an F1 fan, correct?
Yeah, I started out as an F1 fan, and then I kind of became an F1 journalist through my column on Forbes. So the story there was actually in 2017. So I haven't been an F1 fan very long by kind of F1 standards, but I broke my leg skiing in the winter of 2017, just in December actually. And so I was laid up for like 10 weeks, couldn't get off the couch, more or less, like no weight bearing, and just decided in the off season, I want to get into F1, right? Like it was just a weird decision. I was like,
He woke up one morning, it's F1 day.
well, I've got 10 weeks. I gotta, I need content. I need something to like keep me busy. And it was also like a realization, and I wrote about this in my first article, that I always should have been an F1 fan, right? Like I used to review cars, high performance cars. I still do. I've been into high performance cars, but for whatever reason, I never got into F1. So I decided that winter, that's what I was going to do. And of course, this is before Drive to Survive. So, which is like, is spoon fed F1, right? That's what Drive to Survive is, right? So I do take some pride that I got into it before the Drive to Survive era. And then actually wrote an article like about that process. Like, how do you become a fan of F1 properly? And, that was my first article that I wrote about it.
Cool. And talking of articles that you've written, I mean, and again, going back to the alter ego, the way we kind of sort of met and start interacting on Twitter was when you, as Max, shared an article by Rob. And because you'd been following the dirty side and we'd followed you back, I saw that you'd shared it, and it was about kind of the unfairness of the safety car. I think in how that plays out to strategy and
the luck aspect.
Yeah, the luck aspect. And I kind of blundered in and put my 10 cents on there, and I'm really glad I didn't rip into you saying, "Oh, this I don't know why you're sharing this article. This author doesn't know what he's talking about," because I'm actually talking to you. So.
I didn't realize that. Sometimes I forget about the Max Gladwell thing. But, yeah.
But it was quite interesting because you were really kind of looking at the element of luck, especially around safety cars, right? And how that can kind of almost dismantle a race. And should it be able to influence it to the degree that it does?
Well, I mean, and as I read it, you kind of talked about driver talent. You talked about the car and the ability of the car, and then team strategy. And then you said there's this big thing underneath, right? The luck. And that's where I think Rob's question is, when a safety car comes out and changes and undoes the team strategy, as we saw this last weekend at the Dutch GP, that is really kind of can be very penal for some teams. So I know you, in the notes you and Rob had traded, there were some ideas on ways to level some of that. And I'd love for you to explain that.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Like I think there is like the races should be decided by those three factors: driver skill, car performance, and team strategy. And obviously the car performance is the biggest, we know it's not a level playing field, right? And F1 races are really kind of like, 3 or 4 different races taking place on the same track, right? Like they're not all racing against each other. And they know
that's a great point.
It is kind of a weird thing about the sport. But then you get this like safety car, thrown into it, through no fault of anybody, maybe at the front, that this thing happens and it neutralizes the race and it lets some people get fresher tires. And tires are a controversial part of F1 too, just the reliance on them and how variable they are. But I think it really just comes down to like, do you want F1 to be a game of skill or a game of chance? Right? Or do you want it to be some kind of hybrid? So like, I would say like a game of skill is chess, right? There's no chance at all in a game of chess. Roulette is a game of pure chance, right? And then poker is kind of like both. So I just kind of put it out there for discussion because I think it does swing it so dramatically. I mean, it's almost like, in a football game, if you're up, 5-0, the safety car comes out. Okay, now you're only up 1-0. Well, wait a minute.
Well, I mean, we saw that at the end last year, decided a world championship, right? Not to bring up Abu Dhabi. Sorry. Everybody.
No, that's really where I was like, okay, something needs to be done. Like it just swung a championship. Lewis was about to run away with that. He was just continuing to put time into Max, and so.
Yeah, and where I kind of went with the commentary, because I could take that point of view. I guess I've always seen that there are two big Lady Luck slices of the luck pie, as people would call it, that play a big part in F1, which is Brian's pulling the face there. He's never heard of
slices
luck pie.
Of the luck pie.
It's got to be a UK thing. Just go with it. Just imagine a big pie of luck and how many slices you're going to take.
All of the UK listeners are like, that's not a thing either. But keep going, Rob.
Okay, well, it is now. Dirty side luck pie. Anyway. One is the safety car. You can't do anything about it. You might be a driver that's built up a 30-second lead on the field and you were banking on it for your strategy because you're trying to build up a window for a pit stop, and boom, safety car comes out and whatever. And then the other one we were talking about was the weather. And the weather is a huge slice of luck because you could be, the rain comes down and you could have just passed the pit lane where the guy right behind you can now jump in and get inters, and you've got to go all the way around on shiny slicks on a wet surface, and you can't really get rid of that side of luck. So should you be able to get rid of the safety car kind of luck? How can you remove all luck from a race? That was where I was going with my comment.
Sure. No, I mean, and I on the weather side, obviously, like I'm at the other side, like, as a fan, you want more weather, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me a jumbled up grid.
Yeah, just throw the weather at him. I think that's a very rare case that you would just be going by the pit, and like that's. I think weather is pretty much equally dispersed in terms of the advantage disadvantage for every team, and I love when it's in between, and
yeah.
And there's this like principle, you always want to be on the right tire at the right time, like, and whether or not the teams follow that, obviously Lando didn't last year,
right?
And blew his first win. So the weather is great, but like what I would just like to see is, because the safety car is just an automatic, like, you see the safety car, you almost always pit. Like, there's almost very little thought about behind it, right? Because the advantage would be so big. Even if you've pitted recently, you're pitting because everybody else is going to pit and everybody else. So if it's like, okay, if you pit under a safety car, you get a 5-second time penalty. It's like all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute. Like, now the strategist, the driver, people are having to do math to decide whether or not they should pit, take the 5 seconds. And I almost look at it like if you watch the 2010 season, this is another thing I did in becoming a fan, was just actually go back and watch almost all the races from as many seasons as I could. It was the season before DRS, and you listen to the commentators talking about, gosh, you know what? It'd be really cool if there was some kind of mechanism where, like, when they're following, they could, like, so close, they could get this thing. And it's so funny. Then the next year, like, DRS comes out, right? And it's kind of this, I look at it as similar. It's like they needed DRS to try to level the racing field a little bit, make it a little bit more competitive, and doing a 5-second or whatever second penalty for a safety car pit stop, I think would do the same thing.
I think go ahead, Rob.
No, I was going to say, I can see where you're coming from that. I also like to potentially see pitting maybe banned even under the VSC. If the VSC is just there to neutralize it and not really, like, it's almost like pressing pause on the race, right? It's like, we're not going to bring any car out, we're not going to neutralize the gaps between cars, we're just going to pretend that this race stays static while we get rid of the obstruction on there. I kind of think if that's what your intent is, to press pause on the runnings, then no one can pit under VSC either.
Yeah, and I guess unless there's some kind of safety reason that they have to pit on.
Yeah, if you've got bits hanging off your car and you get, like, especially if you get flagged that you have to come in, well, then you've got to come in, right? You've got something hanging off your car, but
and same with, like, red flags. That's the other thing, because, like, apparently, if we can use this as a segue, when I posed this to Paul, Pit Lane Paul, he was like, I get the 5-second time penalty or time penalty for safety car, but under red flag, the tires get so cold that it would be a safety problem if they weren't able to change tires under a red flag and go back out. I was like, okay, you know better than I do.
and like you say, that is an awesome segue, because
thank you, Rob.
You were put onto the trail of the dirty side of the track by none other than Pit Lane Paul, who you met up with in for me, a kind of very bizarre set of circumstances in terms of really nothing to do with Formula One. So just, if you wouldn't mind, just quickly talk us through how you met Paul and who else you met while you met Paul.
Yeah, this was kind of like my worlds coming together, my worlds of cycling and Formula One. So I was invited to go do this bike race up in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, called SBT Gravel. And the enticement to come and go race it was that the organizers were not only invited also Valtteri Bottas and his pro cyclist girlfriend, Tiffany Cromwell, to come do the race, but they were partnering on a race in Valtteri's home country of Finland. So they said, come to Steamboat, race essentially against Valtteri, right? In the distance that he was doing, and then the week after, fly to Finland with all of us, including Valtteri, of course, and go pre-ride this 110-mile gravel course for an event that they're going to do, in 2023, in June 2023. So I was like, I'm all in on that. Like, this is just like the best of everything. And then, of course, at like one of the parties before the event, I'm hanging out with Valtteri, and then I meet Paul, and Paul's there, and he's riding actually like the short distance on an e-bike because he's not a cyclist, and yeah, we all had a blast there. We had a blast in Finland, and Paul became a new friend of mine, just one of a kind.
He most certainly is one of a kind. And Rob, you also have a podcast where you interview Valtteri. Do you want to shout that out real quick? Because it's next in my queue, and I cannot wait to check it out. I saw the highlights of it. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, nice. Well, while I was in Finland, I brought my mics and did interviews with both Valtteri and Tiffany, actually, because it's a cycling podcast, and it's called psychology.fm. It's CYCOLOGY.fm. And it's definitely like a broad-based cycling podcast. So like, it's not just like super hardcore. So of course, Valtteri has gotten way into it because of Tiffany, and now he's competing and he's doing an event. But like, actually, I don't know, a few episodes even before that, I interviewed George Russell when he was at Williams. And the angle there was just that he uses cycling as part of his training, and I could get access when he was at Williams. I'm sure I couldn't get him today at Mercedes. But I actually, I connected with Yost on LinkedIn actually to try to get that one. So that's another one, for F1 fans to go back and listen to and it was actually coincidentally right after Imola, after his crash with Valtteri.
Oh man.
After that big coming together, yeah.
Just as you were introducing that question there, Brian, I kind of had some alternate reality thing where I thought I'd completely forgotten something that we'd done on the pod, because as you set that up with, so Rob, you interviewed Valtteri Bottas. I'm thinking, no, I didn't. I'd love to, but... Okay,
so the Valtteri episode's out. That was the last episode, and actually, by the time you guys hear this, the Tiffany episode will be out as well.
Nice. Well, before we move across to do the DRS, just while we talk about the cycling, as we were kind of talking to you beforehand, before we started recording, you showed us the kind of the cast that you're sporting on your arm. So your love of cycling has kind of seen you. You really had to go through it to take part in these events. Because why don't you just tell everybody how you took part in terms of a certain part of your body?
Yeah, this was fortunate, unfortunate event, because it is a really cool story. And as a journalist, I love a good story. But about a week or 10 days out from the Steamboat event, I crash mountain biking, go over the bars, and fracture my wrist. And so I have to go see an orthopedic surgeon to get an opinion on it. And she looks at the x-rays and she's like, yeah, we got to, do surgery. We got to put a pin in that, given how much you ride in order for it to heal properly, so forth and so on. And I'm like, that's great, but look, this is what I got coming up. And I told her the story. I'm like, going to Colorado, I'm going to be racing against this F1 driver. And she's like, which one? So I'm like, Valtteri Bottas. And she's like, oh my God, we gotta get you ready. Like, you can't miss this. And turns out the entire office is F1 fans.
Amazing.
Orthopedic surgeon. So they're all like rooting for me. They're like, yeah, you got to go do this. So they sent me to a physical therapist to get this like custom brace made for my wrist that's like shaped to my wrist and my riding position. So I can go to Steamboat, I can go to Finland, I can do all this and then come back afterwards and get the surgery done. So, and it all worked out. We did it all, got my interviews, and actually in the race, Valtteri, there was about 700 people in like our group. It was like a 60-mile course. Valtteri got 4th overall. I got 21st. I was about 10 minutes off of Valtteri. So I wasn't very competitive with him, but I was certainly at the sharper end of the pack.
But as luck would have it, you get 10 minutes bonus time for having a cast on, right? So essentially you beat him.
I'm
It's
also
like a
18,
penalty
I'm also 18 years older than him. So.
Well, all those fantastic stories and all those amazing experiences, they count for nothing because the biggest moment of your life is about to arrive now, which is taking part in the 100 seconds of DRS. I need you to agree here and sound excited.
All right, let's do it.
So, for better or worse, you've got me giving you the questions, and Brian is going to do our timing.
Which is usually for the worse, but I will try. So both Robs, are you ready?
Ready.
Yes, sir.
3, 2, 1, begin.
Best F1 driver on the grid currently.
Hamilton.
First poster you had on your bedroom wall.
Let's see. It would have been a Lamborghini Countach.
With the doors open, yep. Favorite F1 track?
True. Track is Spa, race is Monza.
Okay. Mario or Luigi?
Mario.
Favorite livery of all time on an F1 car?
The Senna McLaren.
Yes.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yes.
Favorite non-motorsport sport?
Cycling.
Best thing to do on a rainy day?
Let's see. F1 simulator.
If you could add a venue to F1, where would it be?
Well, let's see. It would have been Vegas, but we got that now. Let's see.
You can skip if you want to.
Skip it.
What's your favorite cheese?
Let's see. Munster.
What would you give to the winners instead of champagne if you could change it?
Tequila.
If you could swap the cars out for another type of transportation, what would you like to see them racing in?
Let's see. Those little like kind of push bikes with no pedals. Kind of have
And do you know what the Sky Red button is?
I don't. And I wish they would just stop saying that.
And that is time. That is time. You're not a Sky Q or Sky Glass customer, apparently, Rob, because neither am I. I don't know what it is.
I know. Seriously.
I go to the bar that I've got in the town here that kind of is nicely putting on the races for us on a Sunday morning. I kind of had to educate a few of them in there. They're like, it'll come up and we'll all be watching it, and they're like, "What on earth is the Sky Red button?" I'm like, educate them as to what it is, and it's really not that exciting, but it's just funny that by virtue of buying the coverage, they get like every single second of the coverage, even though big chunks of it have probably got no relevance to the US whatsoever. So hopefully one day the US can get their own broadcasters, share the pictures maybe, I don't know. But it needs to, as it grows and continues to grow, I think it needs to take that final move that someone like ESPN or whatever actually takes the whole thing on, right? We shouldn't have to rely on that UK coverage as much as I love it.
Like there's a new show. I don't know if you guys saw that Will Arnett one that's on like AMP. I tried to look for it. It's supposed to be like a F1 commentary show. Like you guys haven't gotten ads for this yet?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's on the AMP platform, which I think is owned by Amazon. And Will Arnett, who's hilarious, right? And they've got the podcast with Jason Bateman, which is also a great funny podcast. But so yeah, like the US is making some strides here in getting more content, and I think that's really like Dirty Side of the Track is a very American. It feels like a very American Formula One podcast, which we need.
Even with Rob's funny accent.
Well, Rob just gives it that little bit of like the kind of Euro legitimacy.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I think the stats really are the thing that set it apart, because that is a very American thing. So like really Focus on the stats.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was an American thing. It's just for me, it's just a Brian thing. But yeah, no, that's
all
awesome.
all American sports, like with the commentators. It's like it's just basically a stream of stats. Is like American sports commentary.
That's a great perspective. I hadn't thought of it that way. And here we're about to have football start tonight as we record this on Thursday, and I can't wait. And I was just looking at stats for the game as I was sitting here, preparing for this. So, Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here and getting to meet you and know you. And for all the Dirty Siders, I would 100% recommend checking out, obviously, Rob's columns on Forbes, his Psychology.fm podcast, and anything else, Rob, you want to highlight for people to check out?
No, those are the two things. Yeah, you can just like search my name and Forbes, and you'll come up with the column.
Amazing. Thank you so very much for joining us for the 100 seconds. This was an absolute pleasure for us.
Oh, same, man.
As always, if you'd like to be on the 100 seconds of DRS, please let us know. We actually caught up with another Dirty Sider via the Twitter. So he tagged us in a DM at F1 Dirty Side and said, I'll give it a try. You'll hear that next week. Awesome conversation. So please let us know at F1 Dirty Side if you want to participate. But now we have 2 full weeks off, 3 weeks to the next race in Singapore. So no preview of a race for next week.
No, we're kind of done now. We're going to have to come up with some kind of content to do over the next couple of weeks. I'm sure we will magic something up out of our F1 magic hat.
I'm feeling sort of Vales Talesy.
I'm thinking Vales Talesy. I'm thinking we've definitely got to get our card sharks, Rob versus Brian, out of the way as well. So, I mean, it'll probably all be really lame, but it will be content.
No, we're not going to do that stupid game I came up with again. We'll be fine.
Oh, man. So, take it easy. We will have content over the next couple of weeks, even though there's no races to listen to. So just want to, again, thanks for listening. If you feel that way inclined, please pass the pod around, and word of mouth is still the most powerful thing to spread it around. So we appreciate anybody who will push someone our way, the same way that Paul pushed Rob our way. So I think really all that's left now, Brian, is probably we will now, rather than our usual outro music, we will let you listen to Andy's, I think the name he gave to this track was God Save the Chain, the mashup of the United Kingdom National Anthem and the F1 Ultimate music, The Chain, which they should bring back, by the way. We will play you out and catch you next time.
Yeah, be well, everybody.